So good morning, Dr. Katrise Perera. I am so excited to be seeing you, my dear friend, and having some time to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. I do miss being on the West Coast as you are a little bit, but I'm definitely much happier in the Deep South.
Yeah, I don't know if I should take it personal that I moved to this area and you moved out of this area, but we can talk about that if you want to. So you
Yeah.
are superintendent in Lancaster Independent School District. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing there. You're not only doing work locally, but your name and your person is at the national front as well, working on policy issues that are important to our kids today. And you're also a great advocate for women. So how ideal that on the first day of Women's History Month, you and I are chatting.
Yeah. How about that? That's a great privilege, I guess. But I'm excited to share as well with you and the audience.
So I love to start off with you maybe just sharing with us, who are the women in your life who shaped you?
Wow, there's a lot. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
like,
glad
where do you
you asked
start,
that.
right?
I'm glad you asked that in a plural form because definitely there were so many. But I would say the one that really gave me the great foundation was my Creole grandmother. I think who raised me along her hemlines and taught me a lot of things, including equity. And I didn't realize it until later in life that we sat down at the dinner table. Everybody had a plate. Everybody had the same thing, but not the same amount, right? But everyone got up from the table full. My plate never runneth over like my grandfather's. However, I know that I went to bed as full as well. And she taught me things like cutting the fat, like in her kitchen, right? Um, we wanted to utilize the ingredients that we had. We were making gumbo. You use everything you have to put into that gumbo and not waste not. And so those things parlayed into my leadership style as well. And also coming to the table and talking through problems and issues. There was always a family meeting at the table, right? So you take those same skills and you apply them as you become a leader in whatever capacity. With that, along with athletics and the number of coaches that I had, they really taught me, I would say, the foundation. But as I got into my career, I tried not to forget where I came from. And you might see this apron. This is an apron hanging in the background. That belonged to my grandmother. And that was her Sunday best apron. And that apron helps ground me on days where I'm not feeling this work. And on days where, I just have to be reminded of who I am and where it came from. That apron caught a lot of tears. It caught a lot of, just whatever. However, my grandmother never let me quit anything. She'd always make me go back out. But as I became a professional, I would tell you the likes of Rosa Atkins, who I first met when I was in Henrico County. She saw something to me that I didn't know that I had. And, I was certainly content on being a teacher. But Rosa said, no, we need you to do something different. Marilyn Royal was another one in Henrico County who saw in me, again, what I couldn't see. And I constantly seek her advice today, including Rosa. Also, Moselle Booker, who I would tell you took a chance on me 20 something years ago as a teacher. I was supposed to be student teaching, but my teacher that I was supposed to be working with had gone out over the summer on maternity leave and decided not to come back. But Moselle decided to let me work with you. I think we can do this without her. And here we are a few years later. But I would also tell you, continuing today, women who I continue to lean on and work with who become my mentors as coaches, as well as my friends. There's people like yourself, who I consider a sister soup. I have other female superintendents that are across the nation that I also consider my sister soups in this work, who purely, unselfishly will stop whatever they're doing if I reach out to help out. They played an integral role throughout my career, but more recently with the COVID and on the pandemic, we just kind of came together as a group and said, you know what? We're all kind of experiencing the same thing. And there's just this amazing group of women who provide me with invaluable guidance and support whenever asked. They mentor me, of course, to continue. They help me gain different perspectives and help me ensure that, I'm able to continue to succeed. So I stand on the shoulders of a lot of different women, and it hasn't just been women. However, since the question and the topic is about women, I will stay with that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Oftentimes, I'm sure you find this as well. I come across, the younger generation of women coming through and aspiring to the superintendent position and wondering, whether they should pursue that role. And they want to know, how did I find my network? How did I find my affinity group? How did they become part of an affinity group? And I'd love to hear how you seek out, put in place your affinity group. What does it mean to have an affinity group? Or how do you put that together? How do you think about that, the people who are going to be there for you?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're looking to do something like that, I will say in Texas, it's been in Oregon and in Texas, as I led in both of those states, it became very evident that I really needed to find an affinity group, people who were in similar situations as me, but also were also female. That I can say comfortably say that we lead differently, but we also treated and people respond to us in a different way. And so it's just trying to find common ground in positions where you are, that people who can help support you, right? To me, it makes sense to start, with understanding yourself and what you need truly, because sometimes people just want to connect with you, but what do they need or what do you need from them? And, I always look at relationships as either a blessing or a lesson, right? And sometimes it's both, and that can be true. But once you have a clear understanding of what your needs are and what that person's needs are, I think you can begin to identify specific individuals or groups that you align with in your values or your profession or your beliefs. And by doing so, I think you can recognize that there are connections between yourself and similar experiences. I think you also learn that these individuals help you open up to possibilities that you may not have been as brave enough to do on your own. They help you gain support of those who can help you reach those goals. Sometimes I think in leadership roles, people are a little bit shy to ask for help because it makes them seem weak. But I think being vulnerable is also being courageous in your work, because it doesn't mean that you know everything, but it knows that you know how to ask for help and resources and utilize them. And I think being a part of an affinity group to me gives me, I will say for me personally, a sense of community and belonging at the same time that helps me feel, I guess, more empowered and confident in my work and what I do as I lead while being a female.
Oh, so well said. I completely agree with how you've kind of couch how you start to think about pulling together your affinity group. And what's interesting is that asking for help, right? And understanding that no matter where you are in leadership, you do need folks around you who you can turn to. And I hope that the COVID pandemic taught us all that none of us knew what we were doing. And so we need each other, right? We
Absolutely,
need
we
to
do.
support one another. And we also have so many unsolved needs and issues in terms of making sure that every one of our children are successful in school. And so none of us have figured out all these answers. And so that affinity group is so important in that way. I wondered if you can kind of compare what it was like leading in Oregon as compared to leading in Texas, and what is that like? There are very few women I know leading in Texas, especially women of color.
Well, I would say the same about Oregon. I mean, but you also have to look at the population of where you're going as well. And I knew what I was going into, but I didn't realize that I was going to be the only Black woman as a superintendent in the state of Oregon, and was the only Black superintendent for the first year and a half until someone else. But I will say this to you, that I've never really lingered or about being the first of anything or the only. My concern, and my grandmother used to tell me this, especially as I became a principal, I talked to her, I was excited about being the first female. And she was like, you really shouldn't be concerned about being the first. You should be concerned about not being the last. And that hit home. It was like, what? I'm feeling very confident and excited about my new job. But then she gave me a whole new perspective to go into the job with, is that don't worry about being first. Worry about not being the last, because not many women, although our profession is dominated by women until you get to the administrative world, right? And you and I have both lingered into a profession where it's dominated by males. And in particular, if you look across the country, white males. In Texas, there are 1,100 districts, public school districts. I don't know how many private or charters there are, but I know for public schools, there's around 1,100. There are 7 of us. That's deplorable, in my opinion. When most of our students are Black and brown, we have the leadership that does not reflect or represent our students. And so I would say the similarity in the two is that there's a lack of representation, but there's always an opportunity to continue to prove oneself and to get better. And I advise aspiring leaders is don't worry, as my grandmother advised me, don't worry about being first or the only, worry about not being the last, because then you know you have done the work that you have set out as a goal, and that you have really served the learning community where you're working very well. Texas has a very rigorous accountability system, much more so than Oregon, and there's a difference there. It's not that Oregon didn't have an accountability system, they did, but there was some flexibility and some options. There wasn't so much local control. However, Texas prides itself on being local control, but it really isn't, not with the accountability system that the state puts on. And again, for me, if you're doing the good work and you're doing what's best for your kids, the accountability systems to me, I will say they don't mean anything, but I'm not pressured by them because I know that I have I think I have a moral imperative as an educator to do what's right by my students. And that's always kept me in the forefront and allowed me to ensure that I was serving my community well. Because I like to say what's good for kids is good for the community. What's good for the community is good for the locality. Good for the locality is good for the state. What's good for the state ultimately is good for this great country that we live.
So 7 out of 1,100 superintendents barely registers a percentage.
Yes,
and so we can calculate it certainly, but it barely does. And so
below national average. National average at least is about 2% for Black women.
Yes, and so you have to make an intentional decision as a woman to go into a space like that. And you don't have to, right? You can go to a place that has a higher percentage. There are some states now that have somewhere between 19 and 27%, which is more of the national average. And so what would you advise women who aren't necessarily seeking to be the first, and that's not what they're hanging their hat on, but they're looking at states like Texas, where they're going to be one of a few. Is there advice you give them about making that decision or how to make that intentional choice?
Sure. I'm not sure that I could really give that advice because, again, to me, it's about knowing thyself. And I would guess if I had to choose a message to other women who aspire to do this work, no matter if it's in Texas or wherever, you got to stay true to yourself and know which hill you're going to die on, right? As a superintendent, you got to know what you stand for and not allow anyone to waver. Not saying that you can't collaborate and work through problems with people, but if you're going to really pursue your passion about this work, I would advise don't give up. Texas it's hard to break the ceiling here. I was a superintendent for a number of years. This is my 10th year, by the way, my second in Lancaster. It was hard to break into Texas if you weren't in Texas. And my plan was always to come back to Texas because I was an area superintendent in Houston back in 2010, 2011, before becoming a superintendent in Virginia. I'm a Southern girl. I'm from the South. I'm from Louisiana. I grew up along the bayous, as I shared earlier. But the plan was always to come back to Texas. It took me a while to get here. But in addition to that, I would say, as for aspiring leaders in this work, the networking and building strong relationships with other professionals in this work and in your field is essential to success in any leadership position, but more so this one, because in your district, you're the only superintendent, right? There could be 4 or 5 different assistant principals, executive directors, et cetera, different administrative levels, but in your district, you're the only superintendent. And so if you don't have that networking and ability to build relationships, or as we shared earlier, the affinity groups that can help mentor and provide you with some valuable guidance and advice in succeeding in this field of your choice, obviously, and having a strong system helps with that. It helps you navigate those challenges as we've all really dealt with the pandemic, but also the successes of your career journey is also invaluable that you can find. And so, again, for me, I don't think I'm in a position, if you will, to give great advice to individuals, but I would say if you don't know yourself, you aren't in this to pursue your passions, and you don't have, I guess, the strong skin or tough skin, and to not give up, this is probably not the work for you, because it's certainly not for the weak by any means. Pandemic or no pandemic, there's always a challenge every day.
Well, I think there is that that lesson for women who are aspirants to think about where they want to lead, and what network they want and need immediately around them. And I think your story says a lot about that. And you're, talking about how you thought about it and how you made decisions says a lot about that intentionality. So we're in tough social political times. What to you is the number one issue for our babies, for our kids, for our youth today, to make sure in particular that our students of color, but we mean all students as well, are growing up, having the space and time with one another to learn each other's history, to do well academically, to pursue their passions. What's the leading policy issue for you, or the leading need for our young people today?
I think our students today have exposure and access to a lot of information, and truly they walk into our classrooms every day with a device that's more powerful than the computer that put man on the moon, right? They walk into our classrooms with that. I think going forward for our students, we have to ensure that we teach them not just about their history or not just about the content in which they're learning, but or just to be consumers of the information, but truly how to be creative creators of their own learning going forward. I think we've seen in this political environment, it's so important for individuals to have, research and critical thinking skills that, many people identified as soft skills, but I see them as their lifelong success skills. Because if you can't think critically or you can't solve problems, you can't communicate, all those skills, again, that people say are soft, but they really are skills for success. We have to be able to allow our students to have an opportunity, again, to become the creative creators of their own learning agencies. And that allows them to utilize some of those skills and refine them and continue to work towards making this world a better place. I'm at a point in my career, I don't ask kids what they want to be anymore. I mean, for me, that's because again, they'll tell you, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an artist, I want to be a singer, I want to be an NFL player. All of this from one person, all at the same time. And as I think we know, the future kids will have a number of different careers. What I'll say is that I think we are in a place in education where we work with kids on how to solve today's problems. And those are the things that I ask students here in Lancaster: what problem do you want to solve later in life? Or what do you see as the biggest challenge that you want to help people overcome? I mean, those type of things, I think, are ways in which, if we're preparing our kids to be creative creators of their own learning agencies, I think we put them in a better position to be successful, and allows them to thrive in this global community that we all live in.
Absolutely. So Dr. Perera, final question: suit jacket, LSU, shirt underneath, and the pearls. What's up with the get up today?
Well, on Wednesdays, not only is it my day to visit, but in our district, we have this longstanding tradition of Wednesdays, or what we call Wear It Wednesday. So you either wear a jersey or a shirt of your favorite team, or a university you attended, or a sorority or fraternity, because my district is majority Black, and we have a lot of professionals who are involved in what we call the Divine Nine, historically Black fraternities and sororities. So normally I most times have on pink and green. Today I chose to wear the LSU piece. And no, I was not a student at LSU. but I certainly spent a lot of money with my children who went to LSU back in, I guess, a few years ago. But still, I still have the jersey, and why not wear it? And I'm going to show you one more thing with my sneakers.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, you guys can keep your stilettos. I'm gonna take my sneakers.
I am so with you. For me, it's the baseball caps that I love to wear.
That too. It's
Yes.
just not a Saturday or Sunday, but I promise you,
Yes.
I wear them a lot. But my
So
students, they get a kick out of the fact that I'm a sneakerhead. So I love it.
that's great. I just enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for these few minutes, right? To talk with you, but also to give the world a chance to get to know a little bit about you. There are so many amazing women leading in
Oh,
education
gosh, yes.
today that it's a personal joy to be able to share stories like yours. And I am also excited you're going to be at the When Women Lead conference in June as one of our speakers there, one of our session
Excited.
leaders. So we're gonna have a great time. A hotel full of women talking policy and enjoying each other is my kind of time. So
Absolutely. I think we're all geek out. That's the thing.
sounds good. You can bring your sneakers.
Trust me, I will.
Sounds good. Thank you.